Have you seen the news today? Teacher pay rises to cost $7 million backed by mayor. Ooh. Truman plans national list of eligibles for major office. Cold War victory seen by Harriman. Prague orders U.S. to shut libraries. Recall Anatish, a surgeon massages heart to save man 65, twice dead in 4 hours. President signs bill to aid Indians, hails 10-year rehabilitation. I don't know how to make sense of all of these stories all jumbled together, all together on the same page. As if, are we supposed to think that Senate proposes awards for flyers downed in Baltic has something to do with rail firemen call strike on 4 roads? And who is this Sander is stripped of medical license? House group bars straight cut of 50% in wartime exercises? I'm totally confused. We're going to need some help reading this mosaic tonight. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. So did any of those make any sense to you? I mean, how do we read these things juxtaposed together? And did we win the Cold War?
It only took 50 years, right?
Well,
yeah,
like,
that was my favorite one.
The topicality, world news summarized, right? That one was the West will win the Cold War because history and morality are on our side, and internal pressures will break down Moscow's control. Ambassador Harriman forecast.
Wow.
Yeah.
Moralities, I guess. But what kind of morality?
The Makassar rebels in Indonesia have surrendered. The Soviet Union reversed its stand and withdrew support of internationalization of Jerusalem under the United Nations. I feel like we're in a time warp.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in a blender. Oh God, I'm in a time blender. And everything's just swirling around. And once in a while you go, oh no, wait, oh no.
Yeah.
Can't keep up with it. But yeah, the tone of the jumbled together headlines, they're all, well, even the positive one, we can win the Cold War. They're all negatives. They're all designed to make you feel like your hair's on fire. You need to run around and put it out, right? Because it's passive aggressive. We can win the Cold War. Even that had a negative undertone to it.
You should write headlines.
I should.
I think this is so we are, for those of you in the know about the Mosaic Ark, deep into writing Act 3, the market, and we're obsessed now, as you learned from last week's stream, with marketing and advertising and such like that. You know, writing ads seems to be quite difficult. Okay, now maybe we can think about this. The difference between ads and headlines. What's the difference between ads and headlines?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, they're both trying to sell. They're both trying to sell something, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
But are they? So you were totally right. I hadn't thought of that with these headlines. I mean, this sense, President signs bill to aid Indians, hails 10-year rehabilitation plan. What? They need rehabilitating?
Exactly. Yeah. What's the negative angle here?
That Sander is stripped of medical license. New Hampshire board terms his action reprehensible. May restore him in June. Here,
Wasn't
here,
that that's
this.
reprehensible, in other words.
Oh, this is House group bars straight cut of 50% in wartime excises. Ways and Means Committee decides to act separately on each item of list. Levy on cameras halved. Sentiment is strong for aiding theater going public. Total cuts may reach billion. I have no idea what those things. Apparently, they're all headlines on the same article.
Theater going public. Okay, so in 2020, Hollywood was screaming for tax money to help it as an industry. Ooh. So there goes the blender again.
Well, I have, are we permanently in this time warp, right?
Yeah.
Teacher pay rises to cost $7 million backed by mayor. I mean, that could be a headline out and the number would be different, right? But the headline out of Chicago right now, nearly 40,000 would benefit by $150 or $250 each if the estimate board approves. Move scored in schools. 4 groups assail proposal as inadequate. See it ending single salary schedule. Okay, everybody, if you haven't guessed, I'm reading the headlines. I'll go to the images. There we go. The headlines from the New York Times. You can squint and see what's the date on this front page. New York, Thursday, April 20th, 1950.
Earth Day. Not yet.
Oh, right. Okay. I'm not sure why McLuhan, because we're talking about McLuhan again tonight, why McLuhan chose this particular page. I mean, it kind of doesn't make any difference. He could choose literally any front page of the New York Times. So he's choosing the New York Times, I think, specifically because it's relatively spare of images, right? It's got these 2 portrait photos of Joseph C. Kolarek and Herman N. Sander. Herman N. Sander is the one stripped of his medical license, right? So this is like the shame picture. I don't know what Kolarek is doing in there. Oh, maybe he's the one of the Czechs to go on trial of charge of treason. I'm not sure.
In Czechoslovakia? Or
no,
it wasn't Czech.
Oh no, he's okay. I have to. Well, this is the Kolarek. So both of the people in the pictures are being accused of nefarious stuff. Right.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Kolarek, 34 of Baltimore, has been in Czechoslovakia since September 1945, serving first as assistant and later as chief press attaché and information service director. He planned to leave the country next Saturday for a vacation in France before returning to Washington. Embassy officials said they would leave comment on Mr. Kolarek's expulsion and closing of the library to Washington. Ew. Okay, so, McLuhan chose this one to highlight in his Mechanical Bride, which we're still talking about, but it literally doesn't matter that it's this page. It could be any page of the New York Times at all.
It could have been the paper sitting on his desk when he wrote that chapter. Probably,
yeah, right. This is just the one that he happened to have to hand. It was fun. So I found this. This is on the digital archive of the New York Times, which I have access to. You ordinary people who don't pay the New York Times directly stuff. I have access to this archive because it's licensed through the University of Chicago Library. So you're welcome. Right? You're wondering why. It's like, but I was interested. It's like, what kind of media world am I in if I don't have to look in the book to see the picture, which I can't read anyway because it types. No, I guess maybe
it's tiny.
Tiny type. So I can read it in the digital image. The digital image is accessible because of this licensing agreement that the university has with the New York Times. And here we are in the media mosaic again, trying to figure out what's going on and why it feels like everything's now. Even though this is nearly 75 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So go back to the headlines and ads, right? So there's no ads on this front page. It's nothing but headlines and these sort of spare pictures. And the headlines.
Right, a lot of the ads are on the back.
Yeah.
Most people don't remember newspapers, right?
I only read the funnies, which I never read the New York Times because they didn't run funnies. I was like, what's the point? What's the point of the paper if it doesn't have funnies? Come on.
That's true.
And it's like the 80s. It was Calvin and Hobbes and Bloom County. And
I've read Prince Valiant for a while.
That only ran on Sundays in the color supplement, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So So we talked about ads last week, and here we are now, but on the front page of the newspaper, which McLuhan has questions about. What's the score here? Why is a page of news a problem in orchestration? How does the jazzy ragtime discontinuity of press items link up with other modern art forms? What? This is an art form? It's just the news, isn't it? Page and a problem in orchestration. To achieve coverage from China to Peru. World news, right? And also simultaneity of focus. Can you imagine anything more effective than this front page cubism? Okay, what's he up to? What's he up to? You never thought of a page of news as a symbolist landscape?
Ooh,
okay,
modernist art.
Yes.
Modernist art form.
Is this actually, isn't it funny now on the internet, we're always talking about the content and we need to make good content and stuff. Literally, in McLuhan's world, makes no difference. It's not the content, it's the medium.
Okay.
Okay, if you want it, it's like we don't.
I'm slower than her.
Feeding you cues here tonight, and we're clearly both tired after a long week of thinking of perfumes, right? We had to do perfume.
That was fun.
Yes, we had to do perfume research to write stanza 19. That the medium. So we're in this medium, and we need to be thinking about the effects of the medium, and the opening thing that we were saying is like, how hard do you find it? Okay, Casey, you're saying people don't remember reading the paper newspaper, but say, reading a Twitter feed or reading, your search screen or something like that. It's like there's all these things juxtaposed together. It's like, think about I could have put my Twitter feed on, right? A Twitter stream, and it's like juxtapose. It
looks like the paper. Twitter does.
Yeah.
Now, the first thing that struck me when I looked at the images, some of them coming up, was the format was identical, and all of them going over hundreds of years. And you read like this, right? And you go to Twitter. What do? You read like this.
The Twitter scroll. But the primary opening mode that he's saying is like, if you think about. I mean, we can complain all the time about, there's nothing good in the news, right? And he does point this out. He's talking about, like, if you read any one of these items, it can feel like there's, where was he talking about that? That there's nothing really, newsworthy in it, right? But you get a page of this stuff every day between, the teachers' pay and the surgeon doing his heart massage and the guys in Prague and the postal cuts, and it's doom. How is this meaningful at all?
Well, I mean, that's interesting. You went like do. Yeah, they're like electrical impulses that excite your brain.
Oh yeah,
right? Little snippets of information.
Yeah,
here and there. Now it was, I think, around the time of Joseph Pulitzer that the phrase yellow journalism was coined, and it was, I think, a pejorative against from one newspaper to another, trying to compete. I said, it's just sensationalism. But it was always that. I mean, there was no such thing as a good newspaper.
Well, so
unless it's the gospel, right?
That is the good news, right? So
right. So that is the good news.
McLuhan actually used. He has examples of two newspapers. The one is the New York Times, right, which he says the front page, and I think he this is like the opening of his meditation and Mechanical Bride on the media, and we talked about last week about how. He's saying ours is the first age in which many thousands of the best trained individual minds have made it a full-time business to get inside the collective public mind. And last week we were focusing on the advertisements and saying, okay, so, they're trying to sell you stockings and they're giving you these images that you're playing with. But McLuhan actually starts with the newspaper, not with the ads, and saying, okay, so this is also the best trained mind trying to get into the collective public mind, that there's a collective mind in this newspaper page.
It is, but it's almost a psychotic mind, isn't it? I mean, everything's an emergency. Everything's terrible, and you're not edified by reading it. and you're more knowledgeable about certain things that have happened, but now you've got the additional knowledge that you can't do anything about it. All it does is increase anxiety. And that's been going on with newspapers for a very long time. But why?
But why? Why does, okay, so I'm thinking, getting you to think about this. Why does it increase your anxiety? We said the headlines are there. They're written in a particular way to startle and horrify.
Yes.
It's all jumbled together as if, I mean, can you make sense of it? Is there one world here? Is there one story here that you can put all these pieces together for?
Well, it's a mosaic, right?
Oh, she got that one. There you go. That's it. And this is, I mean, this is where we got our idea for the Mosaic Ark, right? That what we were doing was in McLuhan fashion. We're coming up. This is episode 99. It took us 99 episodes to prove that we were actually already doing this from the beginning, which was saying, okay, so all of these things are flashing at us, and it's very much in the digital world, like on your social media platform, in your search engine, in the library catalog, it's like things just go like this, and you're like surrounded by the lightning bugs or whatever, right? Like blink, 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 and what you were saying just now is like you can feel mad in the midst of it. Have we been watching? Okay, the news of this past week, right? The man who is ostensibly our president introduced the president of another country is by the name of a third guy. I'm thinking that maybe President Biden needs.
But the discomfort of the Hollywood elite that were promoting him just 2 weeks ago.
Flash, 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 flash. Right, but I mean, it's like, and they're mad, right? That because it's like they're mad that they can't control the stuff that's, and then if you've watched a little bit of what's going on X, and people are like losing their reputations, being shouted at, more losing their reputations. Oh no, what did he say this time? Flash, 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 flash. Yeah. And we're made to believe that this is like new and terrible, and the world has never been so chaotic and horrifying, because how can anybody put all of these pieces together? Well,
yes, it's a 10 million piece puzzle, isn't it?
Indeed, but what McLuhan is pointing out, it's like he says there are few he set those questions up. These are only a very few of the questions raised even by the quiet front page of the New York Times. It's quiet comparatively. Many further questions are raised by the more sensational newspapers, and he has another example of a sensational newspaper. Here's a sensational newspaper. So this one says things like, Jim Farley's story, FDR was firm on packing court. Okay, Jim Farley's story is apparently a book that had just been published, and I have no idea what it is.
You had to look it up. Okay.
5-4 decision on Labor Act cheered him by James A. Farley. Oh, they're running installments from the book. Okay. We'll smoke him out, said FDR. Hits 4 dissenting judges, barred any compromise, wouldn't invite McReynolds. And then an ad for clown. Today, comedy can be tragic. See Laugh, Clown, Laugh in the American Weekly.
Did they run the clown ad directly underneath that?
Yes. Excellent. Yes, it's right next to it. Offers an eye to a blind mate.
That's diabolical.
This woman is in Brazil, Indiana, is offering her husband one of her eyes. Ship trapped in canal as rival unions clash. 2 Nazi spies seized during war are free. What? Pair who aided prosecution of 6 others sent to Reich. Korean Reds threaten Pole in U.S. zone. Okay, this one's from a little earlier, Sunday, May 9th, 1948. Grandma, 59, to graduate. Ooh. A 59-year-old grandmother from nearby Grangerville will be graduated June 28th from Schuylerville Central High School. Mrs. Elmer W. Shaver enrolled in high school in 1944 after she had reared 3 sons. She ranked 6th in the class.
$3.
Okay, so you're saying that the New York Times, we'll go back to the New York Times headline, is quiet in comparison, but it still created, as I was reading them for you, alarm, right? It's like maybe.
Yes, it does. But what's interesting is about that last story about that lovely story about that lady who got her high school diploma after raising 3 sons, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like they wanted to give your brain a break because they knew if they threw too much sensationalism at you, you would just get frustrated and just give up and maybe just put the paper down. So it's like they're feeding you anxiety, and then there's this nice little story. You can calm down. You can take a breath, and then the next page they'll probably hit you with a bunch more stories like that.
Well, allegedly, this Journal American is the sensational press, right? It's
that's what you were saying. But that they've embraced it, but they know that it can't be all sensationalism, because if there's nothing positive in there, people might eventually put it down.
Well,
that's my theory.
There's plenty of positive in there. It's like, if you're stinky, there'll be deodorant. If you're fat, you can be thin. If you're fat, you can be thin. If your hair is the wrong color, it's like, in fact, and this is I think McLuhan, he didn't say it in this book, but he said it in one of his later books. What are the newspapers made for? Are they made to tell you stories about the news and the things that are happening in the world, or are they made to run ads?
Because they were probably getting more money from the ads than they were getting from their subscriptions.
We're considering offering our sponsorship on the Mosaic. Will we monetize our thing so that we can? Are we for sale to help you sell your stuff to our broad and well-read audience? No, but think about they've been running. Okay, so this is what's funny. I have a storybook. I think I've mentioned this before, but called Pigs is Pigs, and in one of the stories in the Pigs is Pig book, there's a skit on a theater company accepting product placement, and the cast gets like weary of having to eat so much breakfast cereal.
I remember that.
And the thing is, it's not even a movie or a television show. It's the ads folded into a stage production.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was like 1900 or so, 1908. Yeah, so if you think about it, here are the headlines all telling you the world's coming to an end. You're all about to die. Buy soap.
Buy soap. Yeah. It reminds me of my favorite candy, Junior Mints. Junior Mints was named after a Broadway play called Junior Miss, and they would sell it in the concession.
Yeah. So marketing with targeted products.
Yeah.
Well, it probably goes back to the 19th century. We haven't traced it down, tracked it down fully yet, but definitely. I was thinking about that. When does branding and product name come in? Here's a fun fact. You guys, okay, one, recognize we're not going to tell you how to put all these stories together this time, because we're going to make you do the mosaic. No, we're going to try to do that.
Here's this 10 million piece.
Here's the 10 million piece puzzle, and it really does mean something. And we teased you into this episode telling you that we're going to talk about the Talmud. I bet you're really wondering how am I going to pull that in, right? And how am I going to connect it to this other thing? And connect it to the other thing. Think about that, and I'll try to remember what I was just talking about. What was I talking about?
We're product placement. We're for sale.
only if you can help with hot flashes and ladies' digestion, and clothing, and we'll go for shoes. I mean, what would we sell, right? What I can't remember what I was talking about. Good grief.
We'll sell memory pills.
We need memory pills. Well,
we need those.
Okay, I had thought about this. It's like if you spend too much time in the internet, you just get lost, right? You're in permanent dream time, and you'll be doing this, right? It's like, here, I'll start. Look, and you could do it on the front page of the New York Times in 1950. Get lost. Start with a story on rail fireman calls strike on 4 roads. Go down to surgeon massages heart to save man. Go up to Harriman depicts Cold War victory. And do you know anything? Right? Is there? This is actually a serious question, because it's like, are we shattered and fragmented so much that you're expected to switch back? It's like this here on a single page are stories that have nothing to do with each other, except for you could put this date on them.
Well, it's keeping you in a heightened sense of excitement.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or distress, depending upon what your personality is. But your blood pressure is definitely up after reading, quick flash headlines like that.
Well, then there'll be pills for you later on and then there'll
be pills for you later on, and things to make you comfortable, make your life easier, especially in the 1950s when they started having all these appliances sold, right? Or things for ladies to make themselves look nicer because they were overworked and,
Do you think they could be doing this on purpose?
Oh, yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
Creating distress so why would they want to create distress in the public? I mean, isn't the public all like, constantly at odds with itself? And we're about to, the world. Did you know? You better sit down and maybe get some of those lady pills right before I tell you these things. But did you know that there are young men out there on the internet talking about who gets called a rat?
Gets called a rat.
Okay, I'm being vague and elusive because I don't actually want to like scream the headlines that are all out there and everybody's talking. It's like, okay, but think about it. If I start talking about what so and so said about so and how they're using bad language about each other and this person is being depersoned. Wait, I thought did I? Sander is stripped of medical license. New Hampshire board turns his action reprehensible. Right?
Reprehensible, but he might get it back. Wink, wink. If he plays ball,
reprehensible.
Whatever like ball is.
Okay, so this is all real, right? The world is about to explode. We're literally nearly in World War III. Did you hear? I've got to do my Alex Jones now. It's coming. Buy my pills.
Yeah, buy my book. Right. Happy people don't buy lots of things.
Buy my pills. Right. Have you seen? It's like I actually, we are not InfoWars. We will sell the pill. No, look, there is something weird going on here. It's like the world has been nearly ending since. What McLuhan does point out at some point. Where does he get it? Let's see. Where did I read that? There was something in here that I was reading.
The war to end all wars, yes. Perhaps.
Nobody can doubt that the entire range of modern applied science contributes to the very format of a newspaper. That is actually our theme tonight. We're talking about layout because the medium is the message. But the headline is a feature which began with the Napoleonic Wars. The headline is a primitive shout of rage, triumph, fear, or warning. So you were right. And newspapers have thrived on wars ever since.
Of all kinds.
And the newspaper with 2 or 3 decks of headlines has also become a major weapon. Just as speed of communication and movement makes possible at the same time such diverse facts as, you'll like this, stock market operations, international armies, and news gathering agencies on a world scale. Guys, don't be feeling special because we're in 2024, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So it enables the press of any nation to keep mobilized the passions of whole populations year after year until the moment comes for the blow. Did you hear President Zelensky was in Washington, D.C. for a press conference?
I thought it was Putin.
With Vice President Trump, right?
I'm confused. Yeah. Yes.
And it also requires recognize McLuhan is a prophet. He's describing our world now, but he's doing it on the basis of what he sees in the newspapers from the 1950s. They are designed to create this situation of anxiety, trauma, war, right? And that's what the headlines are doing.
Yeah.
It also requires a prolonged stirring of passions by means of the press and allied agencies to launch and maintain a world war. Shall I read that again?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Just as speed of communication and movement makes possible at the same time such diverse facts as stock market operations, international armies, and news gathering agencies on a world scale. So it enables the press of any nation to keep mobilized the passions of whole populations year after year until the moment comes for the blow. They're doing this on purpose, keeping everybody exactly as you were intuiting, as you're like, the headlines are screaming at us. War, 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 war. Be upset, be upset, be upset. There's a war coming. Did you know there's a war coming? Buy a newspaper. You need to know about the war that's coming.
Yeah. Buy our newspaper, and more importantly, buy the products that are advertised in our newspaper,
which will help you get over the fact that you just read the newspaper. Never mind the movie where the guy's looking at his glasses and seeing how they're all screaming, right? That was after McLuhan, right?
Yeah.
It also requires a prolonged stirring of passions by means of the press and allied agencies to launch and to maintain a world war. If there were no such means of communication, either in Russia or in the West at the present moment, it would be quite impossible even to dream of a war between them. An amplifying system hitched to one's own heartbeat can, the Russians have found, break down the strongest morale. And the press used as a means of thrill and excitement produces a general emotional situation which leads to a crescendo, and crescendo calls for catharsis, a bloodbath. The actual outbreak of the Second World War was a visible relief to many after the years of tense waiting.
Yeah, just priming people for it.
Constantly. Now, this is to a certain extent, that's not so much a McLuhan-y level of the medium problem, because he says it's like the medium is the message level of that is the font's big on headlines. I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the level of anxiety in these mosaic layouts of a newspaper. I mean, this is the sort of huge insight that McLuhan had of, we are so immersed in this mosaic juxtaposition of information that we don't even realize what we do when we read a newspaper, which is somehow not go mad, although he is saying we're going mad to a certain extent. But there is this, what he's also thinking about is the effect of having all of this juxtaposition and information in fact makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does, but
what kind of layout, sense? What kind of sense? That's what's fascinating.
Right. It doesn't seem to lend itself to any kind of depth of knowledge about any one topic.
So do we know anything? Right. This is very well. See, you've warmed up now and you're giving me the answers. I did not tell you what the answers were.
I didn't know it was a test.
No, so the thing is, I realize what kind of medium do I see, an internet conversation as being? It's like a classroom. Of course, it's a classroom. I'm a teacher. It's going to be a classroom. How else do I get you to think? And no, and it's like I'm thinking about, okay, we're in episode 99. We've been thinking about the way the media works for 2 years now in this format, right? In our live stream format. And we're trying to, I mean, we'd like more people to listen to us, which would be great. Guys, like and subscribe. Tell your friends.
Yes.
And we are also, as live streamers, participating in the sort of maelstrom of media that everybody's quite anxious about, right? And so if you're curious, I'm thinking about what's happening on X right now with Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson was interesting to me because 8 years ago, he and I were the two professors that got into a lot of trouble, and he got big and I'm still me. I'm the same I've always was. I just have better hair. I don't know. I learned how to who cares? I bought a few new clothes, but nothing, no bespoke tailoring. I watched a lot of his videos, and one of he said a lot of smart things in that context. One of the very interesting things he was saying was, we didn't know what YouTube was, right? And Petersonianism. And we mentioned Peterson last week too, because he and McLuhan are both Canadian professors that got super big in the media. Right. So it there's a connection, right?
It's thin, but it's there.
It's as much connection as there is on the front page, right? It's all things that happened in today.
Yeah.
That we didn't know what YouTube was, and he was right about that, right? He was right that this ability to first just to put videos up, right? So that there was all sorts of information that was newly available that had to be put into words and printed previously, and now we were able not just to hear it on a radio or project it with a television studio, but private people putting their own stuff up onto the internet and going out into the world. And then however long live streaming started 10 years ago as a major thing, the world changed again.
Oh gosh, I don't even remember.
It's something like
I remember
that,
when YouTube,
right?
When YouTube first started, I thought it was just a really odd thing to do. It reminded me of, so back in the 80s, they had, gosh, what was it called?
Public access.
Wayne's World.
Public access.
Yeah, public access. Wayne's World made fun of it in a hilarious
Hey,
movie.
I was on Tyler Hummel's public access talking about film out in the place where Wayne's World is set. So there.
Oh, that's fun.
And he had a Wayne's
fun.
World hat on his set. It was very sweet.
Well, how could you not? Come on. Is it Aurora, Illinois?
Yes, out in
Yeah.
Aurora at the community college. He used to rent space out in the community college. Had me on to talk about Tolkien. See how much we're in this story, right? Okay.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say was when public access came out, I suppose anybody could do it, but not a lot of people did it because it was usually just one or two channels. So YouTube just increased that like by like thousands,
right? And
thousands were starting to do it all at the same time.
Right.
I just thought it was a strange thing because when you were on public access, it was because like your experience, you had a specific topic you wanted to talk about and then you filmed it and then you put it on public access. But YouTube just seemed to be people's personal like video diaries. And I've never even kept a physical diary or had a Facebook account. Because to me, it's just
my brain. I just shut down. You didn't keep a diary?
No, because I don't want to read my thoughts, and I certainly don't want anybody else to.
Well, that's okay. My handwriting's so bad. It's like the paleographers of the future will get to figure out what I was saying about myself when I was 13. Mainly, I wrote the "I'm fat" in big fat letters, so you should be able to read that part. I was such a teenage girl.
Oh, well, that's surprising. Not at all.
And I wasn't fat either. So
yeah, I'm sure you weren't. Like I look at pictures of myself and I go, oh gosh, I was fat. Do you remember? Okay, I swear this is relevant. So
everything's relevant tonight. We're in the Mosaic, talking about the Mosaic, about the way juxtaposition becomes meaning. We will get there.
Well, this is relevant. Okay. So Return of the Jedi. Carrie Fisher is in the gold bikini, right? Okay. She was really thin, and I remember being a 15-year-old girl watching this, going, she can lose a few pounds. I remember thinking that.
It was bad. It was bad.
Right, because it's what I thought about myself, and it's because what every normal-sized girl thought. They were obsessed with thinness. And that's directly related to marketing.
Oh, yes. I was going to say, why could that be? How could that be? Well, but now, so, I mean, and this is actually, it's related, but then it will shoot us off on another rabbit hole topic of it. It is true that the images out there in the marketing affect the way they're mirrors, right? They affect the way we think about ourselves because, as we talked about in the ads last week, they're constantly telling, particularly women, you're inadequate, buy our stuff. Then you'll feel better, but then you can buy more stuff. So, all the desire to put first normal sized women in the fashion ads and now fat women in the fashion ads. I do get it. Right? I grew up in the 70s. It was a hard time to be not twiggy.
No, yeah, but they're actually promoting morbid obesity, which is disgusting. Well, they shouldn't be doing that.
Rubain's like them plump.
That was his own wife, actually. So he was enamored of his young wife. He had a very young wife. She was very heavy, and he was just hopelessly in love.
So did he paint her 3 times in the Graces? He said she's like tripled her.
She was his model for a beautiful naked female form. which, blah, to my opinion, right? But look, it would be no different if somebody were truly anorexic and they were being put on billboards too.
Well, but
Both of those things are on the extreme ends of unhealthy.
The problem of advertising and of the media that you're in, and we'll get back to the fragmentary nature of the front page in a second. That, you know, it is very easy to see why, with the internet and the digital world and the videos and such, people are constantly mirroring themselves into what they see. So if they see people with different color hair, they're going to want to color their hair. It's very simple. If they see people fat, they're going to be fat people collect, right? The Midwest is bigger than the coasts. Because I mean, we are designed to blend. So, you know, you're going to blend in with the people that you're around. You're going to dress like them. You're going to talk like them. It's the way we signal familiarity and comfort.
I suppose, but are there people out there purposely trying to get enormous for looks?
So this, I think, is the darker side. We're trying to understand,
because honestly,
of modernity.
Anorexia was
right?
Anorexia was not the big problem. As big a problem as maybe people thought it might have been, because it was being the subject of like after school movies, because they, you know, there were girls that were doing this and they were killing themselves slowly by doing this, you know, so it was publicized against that. But like I said, I saw Carrie Fisher go, she could lose a few pounds, which is insane. No,
she was very
tiny,
beautiful.
You know.
Okay,
yeah,
but this fits with the problem of, on the one hand, you have the newspaper telling you things like Russia's about to go to war.
Yeah. I think it comes down to this. Maybe I'm skipping ahead too much. Maybe my brain skipped ahead.
That's okay. That's
happy people.
All right.
Happy people don't buy products. Unhappy people buy products because they want to make themselves happy. So if you keep them in a constant state of anxiety and unhappiness about their weight, their hair, you know, their clothes, the kind of car that they drive, they're going to spend money to get those things. They're going to finance those things.
Well, this is,
they're going to
finance the wars, because the front page is entirely an ad for war. It's all ads.
Yeah. Right, but if I feel
think about this. There's no news. It's all ads.
No, it's not news.
And McLuhan actually says this in Understanding Media, and I forgot to look this part up because I didn't think we were going here, but that's okay. We'll get to the Mosaic problem in a minute. That the newspaper is written to make you anxious, and as you're saying, and then you'll buy stuff, right? So
right. And you'll support senators who want to spend money on war too.
It's all
right?
The newspapers are one giant ad for war.
Yeah.
And have been since the Napoleonic Wars.
Yes.
Interesting.
And well, at least to the 20th century, because I haven't read up enough about it yet. It's also an ad for how you comfort yourself during a time of war.
Yes.
Or a time of heightened anxiety. Right. And the secret is buy lots of stuff. Is if we would believe them. But you hear it constantly.
But always. But saying that this media, this particular medium of alarm, is it's literally all advertisements. It's all designed to generate your emotions. Even the New York Times front page, even the calm, quiet New York Times front page.
Was this the way they promoted themselves, as the calm, quiet New York Times?
Well, that's what he called it, right? The quiet front page.
Oh, okay.
Saying this is the quiet front page, as compared with.
It didn't seem quiet.
Okay, the New York. Well, okay, because you're Princess in the Pea by now, having been hanging out with me too long. It's like, ow, ow. You know.
Maybe.
So even the New York Times front page is all the news, but war, shame, war. Guy saved someone's life who's about to die, and then the American Journal, which is, this one was a little harder to find because we don't have the archive of it. Apparently it's the Hearst Press. It's a sensationalist muckraking exercise. Why does the Hearst Press attempt to organize the news of each day into a Victorian melodrama? I mean, assuming that the New York Times isn't, but whatever. Yeah, anything queer in a big urban press, going flat out for the small town, the small guy, and Cracker Barrel sentiments. Saying, the New York Times is presenting itself as one thing and still selling war. The Hearst Press
Hmm.
is selling melodrama and it's little guy interest, and he says that
Yeah.
its main premise is, the David versus Goliath, right? Jack the Giant Killer. It's the little guy against but it's run by Hearst, right?
Yeah. The big
The
guy, a
giant.
very big guy.
So, this is the twin sides of our current political thing. It's like there's the respectable establishment true story of the New York Times, and then there's
Oh,
the muckraking,
yeah.
sensationalist. It's like
And that
they're
itself is a
back to
drama playing
back.
out for the public. Yeah. That itself is a drama playing out for the public. So whose side are you going to be on? Who's going to win? Who's going to win the newspaper wars? Right. I think that was a real
That was a real
thing,
thing.
actually.
Yeah, this is all a
Yeah.
real thing. They're all screaming at each other, and the thing is,
Hmm.
sad, poor little people, they don't care, right? What they want is your emotions up, as he said here,
Yes.
so that you'll go to war.
Hmm.
Well, Mel is saying everything, everywhere, all at once. Medium and fear of missing out.
Feels like it.
Yes, everybody's like creating
Yeah.
this fear of missing out on everything. Okay, so the back up a little bit question. Now that we've read the feel of what these front pages are able to.
I have anxiety now.
Okay.
Just talking about it.
Well, but because they're designed to do, excuse me, they are designed to have that effect, right? No, excuse me.
Mm.
The problem is, what are they as go back to the calm New York Times so you can pretend to be calm. What are they as let me say, as a medium, right? As what kind of effect do they have on our cognition? So what McLuhan, well, and what we're in the stream, right? And streaming, I mean, the live stream element of it, we haven't talked about this in a while, so remind everyone that that we're in a kind of James Joycean river run from, I used to be able to say it 2 years ago, that we're in the flow of the internet, and so live stream is actually a lovely name for this, what
Yeah,
we're
it is.
doing, because we're in this flowing light experience of real time, right? That the premise of the live stream is it's live, right? So that this
Mhm.
happens in real time. So if your doorbell rings, you actually have to get up and go deal with it.
Oh gosh, that was so embarrassing.
But it was
I'm
true.
sorry, everybody.
Right? It was actually, the livingness of it is, although most of you are watching this recorded, this actually is happening on, in the world, into the internet, in this flowing
Hmm.
element, rather than something visual and fixed, right? It's a temporal experience, more like music. But there's
Jam session.
jazz, right? But this is, how does the jazzy ragtime discontinuity of press items link up with other modern art forms? What kind of art form is the newspaper? That's where the sort of calmer question is, the contemplative question.
I have an odd thought. It builds structures in your mind that weren't there before.
I have such good students. Say more, please say more.
Well, I have a picture of like scaffolding in my head right now, and so all of these stories, that especially the way they're formatted, like where they're like this in short little blocks.
Yes.
It looks like they look like like a scaffolding that's going off in a couple different directions as it's building something. But what, right? Tower of Babel. Who knows?
Okay.
Of information.
What is it? Yes. Right. It's like, it is, in fact, think about what it took to get all those things on the same page.
Yeah, it took a whole lot of people experiencing stuff and then talking to other people, and those other people writing it, and those people taking it to their editor, and that person sending it to I forget the name of this position, but the person who actually puts it all together,
like the compositor,
in the right format. Let's see, it's a gosh, I'm sorry, the name escapes me. See, print.
Compositor.
That's not the word I'm looking for. But but it's before it goes to the printer, and then the printer actually puts it together and blocks it. It's hard to think like this anymore because everything's done electronically, but it used to be done on these big presses,
Right.
and people had jobs to actually put them together in these blocks in the printing press.
Yeah,
And
they had they're like in frames when this was actually type,
right,
movable
yep,
type. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, right. So when that person whose job it is to put that all together, and you see these physical
Mm-hmm.
blocks, that's what it feels like inside my head when I look at headlines and a bunch of different stories.
That's exactly
So,
what McLuhan means by the medium. It's
uh,
like it's saying when you start thinking about it not as the content, which is what we've been talking about, the headlines and the anxiety and stuff like that, but the actual, like the way it creates the world at the experiential level. He talks about media as they're extensions of our physical selves, but that they um create a kind of thing. And like with movable type for printing, it was the linearity of the reading practice, but you're also talking about it boxes you into frames. That's really good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You so that the world
yeah,
comes to fit it all on that single newspaper page. And it's like the comedy and newspaper stories, like it's too long, you got to cut 3 inches, da, da, da. It's very
yeah.
structural, this hyper
Right, that's
structural,
true.
so that all of and that it's he said this, it's cubism, right? You never thought about that
Yeah.
front page cubism. You never thought of the page of news as a symbolist landscape. There is a
Mm,
design to it that it all has to fit. So time has to fit on that box. It all has to go
yeah,
in, and all of those different pieces have to fit to get. It's like this length of story has to fit against this length of story, and we can fit in that length of story in there, and that then is it. Um, you could say chaos, and he talks about this. Like, is this completely irrational and chaotic?
they're fragments,
Does
right?
that mean
It's
therefore
a
it's um irrational, right? He says it's like some, you could say discontinuity is chaos come again. It's irrational. It is the end. Remembering that
hmm.
McLuhan is a great fan of James Joyce, and he is invoking him here right now.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Say notoriously is the visual technique of Picasso, the literary technique of James Joyce. So that everything's juxtaposed and in
Yeah,
pieces and fragments. And he's saying, okay, so does that mean that this is all chaos? Thinking about Jordan Peterson again, right? He's like, oh, this, like, we're in chaos, we need to give it order. Okay, what just happened on the newspaper page with, and you were right to say there were all these things that people were talking about, and then they were rendered into written
notes
notes,
first.
and then rendered. So but the world, I mean, the newspaper is, it's like the headlines are screamers, right? It's meant to give you back out that sense of the oral world, the oral
Hmm.
culture, but it's gone through this transformation of structural composition.
Right, you can't ask any questions, or you can, but you don't know where to get the answers because these were people that talked to other people
Mm,
before it was written down.
right.
If this were just the village and it was all gossip, you could probably dig into it more and find more information about it. That's why they're just fragments. So there's just these fragments of information, just enough so that you get the general idea of what was spoken about, but nothing in depth. And by the time you figured that out, oh, you've got another headline that's grabbed your eyes. So the next story has grabbed your
Don't
eyes.
you know that the reason I'm able to get this digitally in the archive at the University of Chicago is because this is the news. This is reality.
It's a portion of
It's
it.
I have colleagues in modern history who will cite the New York Times as the truth, as against, I don't know,
Oh,
what somebody
my
says actually
gosh, really?
happened to him at Ruby Ridge when his family was killed.
Right. Why don't you speak to the actual person?
Oh no,
Right.
couldn't do that. They're not
Well,
trustworthy. We'll go with the New York Times.
they're not trustworthy, but a third, these are
Oh
historians.
yeah, this is a particular person.
They consider a newspaper to be a primary
Yes,
source when the person interviewed in the newspaper is still living.
right.
Okay, go with that.
So what your intuition of saying that there is this world out there that is being rendered artistically into this frame, And then and with these juxtapositions, and then what McLuhan is wondering about is, and to keep that idea of the oral world that is fluid and real, and you in conversation with it, right? And then what becomes authority, right? Here's this is authority.
Yeah.
Is it irrationalism?
Hmm.
And you've actually already answered. This is what McLuhan says. We're redoing McLuhan, right? Okay, so he says, okay, so these are, he asks the questions. Many further questions are raised by the more sensational newspapers, which we've looked at. But any paper today is a collective work of art. Isn't that nice? And that's the way you described it, right? It's like it takes lots of different people to put this together. There's an editor who's designing it. And we had last year, about last spring, a year ago last spring, one of my colleagues in medieval studies who does paleography, studies font and handwriting, talked about where they got the font for this newspaper, right? Then
I listened to that. It was a really good lecture.
Maybe it was the London Times. Was he New York Times or London Times New Roman? Now I've forgotten.
It was Times New Roman.
Times New Roman.
I think it was Times New Roman.
But is that the London Times or this Times?
It started in the London Times, London and then Times. It came over here. Yeah.
So Times New Roman, but it's a font that's designed, it's like this collective work of art, right? A daily book of industrial man, an Arabian Nights entertainment in which 1,001 astonishing tales are being told by an anonymous narrator to an equally anonymous audience. That's fascinating, right? It's like, this is what we have all these intelligent people giving us the folklore, but it's collectively anonymous, like it's like the internet says, the newspapers say, right? They say, right? There's that they out there. This is an anonymous world of conversation being told, that these tales being told daily. And the Arabian Nights entertainment, right? That's like, there's you have to get a new one each day, right? The news cycle is this. You have to have another one each day. It is on its technical and mechanical side. The front page is linked to the techniques of modern science and art. Discontinuity is in different ways a basic concept both of quantum and relativity physics. It is the way in which a Toynbee looks at civilizations. It's Arnold Toynbee wrote a big history of civilization. Or a Margaret Mead at Human Cultures. She was studying anthropology, right? So history in it. This is like, if we put the newspaper together here, it's this problem of how do you look at quantum events or perspectively different events, relativity. Notoriously, it is the visual technique of a Picasso, the literary technique of James Joyce. But it would be a mistake to join the chorus of voices which wails without intermission that, quote, discontinuity is chaos, come again. It is irrationalism, it is the end. He says it's a mistake to think that, right? Quantum and relativity physics are not a fad. They have provided new facts about the world, new intelligibility, new insights into the universal fabric. I mean, Hans might disagree, but I have to have him back on.
Gotta have him on.
Practically speaking, they mean that henceforth this planet is a single city. I like that he says it's single city, right? It's like, what happens in a city? People talk, right? So
it's the world village.
It's the world village, right? Yeah. Far from making for irrationalism, these discoveries make irrationalism intolerable for the intelligent person. They demand much greater exertions of intelligence and a much higher level of personal and social integrity than have existed previously. In the same way, the technique of Toynbee makes all civilizations contemporary with our own. Remember how we were joking at the beginning? I was saying, when are we? Everything's contemporary. All of it's contemporary. It can all show up on the front page at any given time, and all of it's happening all at the same time each day, right?
Yeah.
The past is made immediately available as a working model for present political experiment. It's like Margaret Mead's Male and Female illustrates a similar method. The cultural patterns of several societies, quite unrelated to one another or to our own, are abruptly overlayered in a Cubist or Picasso style to provide a greatly enriched image of human potentialities. But by this method, the greatest possible detachment from our own immediate problems is achieved. The voice of reason is audible only to the detached observer.
Is he saying he thinks that the stories in the newspaper are being enriched? Because to me, it sounds like they're being stripped down.
Well, he does note, I was trying to figure out where he said that any one story feels like it's like not really very interesting, but
Oh,
but
oh, okay.
it's the
So
collection of
the
things.
collection, the
It's
collective
yeah, it's
stories,
the
the collective
collective,
voice.
and it's this anonymous collectivity that is all permanently present.
So, you end up knowing a little bit about a lot and a lot about nothing.
Okay, well that is the big question, right? The degree to which, and I don't think I was thinking about this quite specifically, but one, we lament constantly that people don't sit down and read long narrative books. Well, I write them, so you guys got to read mine. Um, uh, and it is true that, and certainly the exercise of writing, oh, I don't know how many 600-page books have I written? 4. They different font sizes, so they're not all the same number of words, but I've written a lot of long books, right? The mental discipline to keep things connected like that is
Hmm.
intense. Trust me.
Yeah,
I'm a superwoman. PhD, right?
she
It's like,
really is.
oh, but the thing is,
She keeps us in line when we write.
I does that connect with the previous thing, right? Got it,
Right.
got those transitions and links. But the feeling of being it was like in the chaos of all of the internet and the scream over there and the scream over there and the scream over there and the scream over there, and then everybody talking now about, isn't it great now that we're all in being able to put together like our Pepe Sylvia conspiracy theory guy. It's like it's connected there and it's connected there and it's connected there and it's connected there and it's connected there, and McLuhan is saying simply, we do that when we read the newspaper. It's laid out
Yeah.
for us, and you're just like, well, okay, option, everybody's gone mad from reading the newspapers like that are laid out like this, or it in fact has given us like, how else are we going to make sense of this complexity? There's I mean, I'm not sure you could narrate it in a single book.
It's the art of the segue, right? When you have that many different stories on a page, it's like one has to segue into the other, because if they're completely disconnected, people aren't going to. They're not going to keep reading because it'll confuse them.
Right. And this, I think in real terms, in sort of sober, not Pepe Sylvia terms, this is a problem of what kind of knowledge world we're existing in now. Because if it's all if it's all completely fragmented, it's so much so that people don't even notice that they're being made anxious by the headlines so that they buy stuff. They're being they're being made anxious by the headlines so they buy war, right?
Yeah, cathartic, as you said.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, we still haven't had the war yet. We still haven't had the war yet. We're gonna have a war. Didn't you know we're gonna have a war? How long are we gonna have to watch the trailer for the war?
The trailer. That is what it's like.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like we're watching perpetual trailers. Can we please have the war so we can stop,
It's
anticipating?
performative.
It's totally performative. Okay, so at this point, it's saying, is this peculiar to modernity, this ability to put together these connections? Why was McLuhan able to see all of these things and nobody else prior to him had understood or articulated what kind of mental world this media was creating? And does this have any, it's like McLuhan's little questions, right? And does this have anything to do with what McLuhan did his doctoral dissertation on? Ooh, is that a segue, or am I just gonna like burst forth and it's like, what would you say, other than the newspaper, is the single most confusing textual layout out there that people use to talk about how smart and complex they are? Here, we'll go to the next page. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, I don't read this script, so I don't know what it actually says. I think those letter forms are Hebrew.
Yeah.
So anybody in the audience know anything about the Talmud? Mel, where are you? Tithe Most High has made the entrance. Okay, they're talking about haircuts in my stream.
Oh, we did mention hair.
No.
Okay,
look,
so let's talk
Saint
about
Benny,
hair.
watch the stream. Okay, he's not watching. He's talking about his hair. See, talk about the juxtaposition of things that happen in the online social media world, right? Do you know anything about the Talmud? Yeah,
Me?
things
Okay.
that you have heard about the Talmud.
It's a commentary on the Torah,
Okay, yes.
right? Over several
Yes.
centuries. So there were multiple rabbis giving their opinions on most of the Torah, but also giving some of their opinions on Christianity, which weren't very nice.
Okay, you're talking about
And
content
that's what I know
now.
about the Talmud.
Step back and
Yeah, I'm talking about
talk about it
content.
as a practice. What people say
Oh, it's
it's
argumentation,
argumentation,
right?
right?
Right,
Okay.
because I mean, it's, yeah. So the rabbis would argue with each other, and they would argue enough. This is what I understand. They would argue enough and so well that they would eventually come to a consensus on an item that they were discussing.
Okay.
At least I think that's the theory. I've never read it, so
Okay,
I couldn't say
it's
for sure.
I showed you some of these layouts. Do you think you could read it looking at the layout of this page? So on the page
Oh, that was really, yeah, it was really,
there's a big block of larger type on it, and
uh-huh,
then there's a middle column that has medium-sized type, and then
right.
there's a surround of even smaller type in several different sections. Here, I've got another picture for you so that they're marked
Yeah.
out. So there's the block, and there's the purple thing that's in the middle, and then
Hmm.
there's uh it's
Well,
outlined in
now this
lighter
might be
purple, the middle part, and then there's
yeah, it was
the
very
very
strange.
different
Some of it looks like a
portions, right? It's
maze.
like, go ahead.
Some of it looks like a
Mm.
maze. But I don't know how much of this is a function of the Hebrew being read from right to left. I don't really know if that influences how they were putting the layout there. In some of the examples you have, one of them, it actually looks like they put a maze in it, or it looks like a keyhole. It's really strange.
Yeah, that's one of the Oxford manuscripts that I have for you. Uh,
Uh,
oh, I think I took, did I? No, yes, you're right. That one's a manuscript version. These are print, right? The one with the um colored boxes around it that I'm showing now
okay,
is a
so
printed book from the 19th century.
okay,
And I think usually when people see a Talmud layout page like this, it's like, oh no, it's too confusing. Where would you start? What's actually important? I mean, you're right that I am actually thrown by the fact that the script goes from one side, the opposite side. But and I'm interested that I am more thrown by that than I think I would have expected. And I can't read the script, so it's not like, I can read Greek and know how to pronounce it or something like that. This I don't know how to pronounce seeing it. But the sense of, like, if you're used to a regular book page that we have now, it's like you read like this and there's one block of text, maybe
yeah.
footnotes you throw. You guys read books with footnotes, right? That this sort of
Mhm.
multiply layered structure of pieces seems like it's just designed to be bewildering and inaccessible and create, you know it's sometimes you could say, are the different pieces of the layout arguing with each other?
Right. It's like they're following a trail of thought, the way they laid out the print. Hmm. But still, if you look at it, never having seen it written
Mm,
before, let's say I don't know, let's say I'm a yeshiva student from, I don't know, 1900,
right.
right? And I see this thing for the first time. I'm like, what?
Yeah, so you feel
I know how to
there's
read Hebrew, but why is it going like
a
this?
particular, like,
You know,
training that you need to be able to know how to relate the pieces to each other, and there's a kind of mysticism to the complexity of that page.
so is that the reason that they did it like that?
What do you think?
I honestly have no
Okay,
idea.
so one, I was asking, it's like
It's like a
it's a
maze.
commentary, right? You're right about it as a commentary. And the what I get the sense of people just generally talking about the Talmud is it's confusing because there are all these different voices involved in it, and it has a kind of authority because you're not going to understand where all of these voices are interacting from unless you've studied for years and years and years and years and years. And so it's aversive to the uninitiated.
Hmm.
And and I sometimes feel like sometimes people set it up like, and that's a good thing because this is hard intellectual work that we have to deal with, and it's like
So they did it
it.
to weed out the wheat.
It's like you can't read this. No,
Like, it's not hard enough. Let's put it in a weird block.
So this is so we hold this up. It's like, here's this Talmud page. It's very complexly laid out. I mean, this is 19th century, late 19th century layout. You could say it looks like a bit like a newspaper, don't you think?
It does. It was striking how much like a newspaper
Like
looked.
different voices, maybe it's like maybe there's a central idea and there's headlines and there's okay, so if it looks like a newspaper,
Commentary. Isn't that what newspapers are?
yeah, I think this goes the other direction too. The newspapers are in fact simply commentary. There's also this I was thinking about this. The main thing that people always see, the sort of the second level thing that people know about the Talmud, if they've ever seen a page and they say it's confusing, they say it's oral, right? And that it was interesting to me that you were saying the newspaper comes from conversation, oral report. The reporters go out, talk to people, put it down in text, and to a large extent, that's also what the Talmud is, right? It's the debates, conversations that the rabbis had. The bigger print part is the oldest part, right? The Mishnah and the Gemara. So there's the old layer of 6th, 7th, 8th century. This is the Babylonian Talmud. So this was the 6th to 8th century with the commentary on that with the Gemara, and then more commentary on the outside from the 12th and 13th centuries. So
so they were adding to it. So it was they were adding layers to it.
This is a 19th century printing of it, right?
But it might have been from taken from a handwritten manuscript, right?
Yes. Where do you think they got the idea to do the Talmud layout like this?
I know you're going to say something else, but I would have first said from a newspaper.
Oh, but that would be interesting, right? No, but they couldn't have because these. Okay, one, you're saying, could this be a manuscript layout? Could it be a newspaper? Is this a modernist layout? Where does it come from? Okay, guys, I'm sorry to tell you, the Talmud's laid out like a Bible, glossed by Christians. Okay, it's actually Christian. It's a Christian format, and this is okay. So one. When I said I understood McLuhan intuitively because like I start reading, he's talking about a newspaper, it has all these juxtapositions, and he's reading the newspaper like you would need to read a medieval commentary on the Bible. And the image that I'm showing now, this is one of my favorite manuscripts of all. It's the Eadwine Psalter. It was copied at Canterbury in the early 12th century, and it's fascinating. One, because it has great pictures, right? Those pictures, here I'll go. I have a highlight of the picture. Here we go. This is a commentary on Psalm 8, right? And the pictures are like little cartoons. I said I read the newspapers for the comics.
Yeah,
right?
It's a comic book.
It's a comic book, right? These they're in color and they're very pretty, but they're modeled on some older ones that were done in just black and white, right? Sort of wash. From the Carolingian period, and we have 3 Bibles like this: Utrecht Psalter, there's a Harley Psalter, and this Eadwine Psalter that seem to have the same series of pictures, or they're copying each other, right? So they have the pictures, which are themselves illustrations of what the psalm is saying, but it gets even better. Okay, so you see, this already has hints of the way the Talmud layout is going to develop. A bigger text in the middle, which is the text of the psalm, right? And that's done in fat type, right? And then there's on screen I have there's one bigger column that has the fat type. That's the psalm in one translation. These are all Jerome translations. That's the one translation. And then 2 more translations because Jerome did 3, right? Called the Gallicanum, the Romanum, and the Hebraicum. And the Gallicanum is one that he did first. The Romanum is the one that he did that became more authoritative, but the Gallicanum is still, don't worry about it. There are 3 Jerome translations, one directly from the Hebrew. the monks who made this manuscript, they give you all three of Jerome's Latin translations with interlinear, which means the scribbles over the top, translations into Anglo-Saxon and Anglo-Norman. This is a trilingual, tri-translation copy of the Psalms with pictures, and that's not even all of it, with commentary, right? So there's
That's
also
amazing.
commentary in the margins that are like from the gloss, which is yet more. These are, you could say, they're study books, right? That you're going to probably not read from directly, because the monks who made this memorized all those psalms, but they are the kind of book that you go to really contemplate the complexity of the meaning of the text.
So were the commentaries, were there multiple people contributing on a single page?
I'm so happy you asked. Okay, so where does all this commentary come from, right? And this Psalter, they're making it after the Norman conquest, and so one of the things that it's interestingly preserving is the Old English, right? That there's they need the Old English and they need the Anglo-Norman, because the community has to deal with both languages. They're older people that speak Anglo-Saxon, Old English, and the newer monks, Normans brought over Anglo-Norman. They all pray in Latin, so it's there. But then there's, throughout, this is 1,000 years into Christianity, right? Thousands and thousands of years of thinking about what these texts that they're singing mean. And they have several commentaries by Augustine, Cassiodorus, Rabanus. Who else? I didn't double check, look up what's in the Adwina Psalter. They've been monks writing commentaries on what the texts mean, and by the 12th century they want them all tidily in the same text, right?
So they can go over other people's thoughts and,
yes,
and think about them. Oh, that's really
right.
neat. Yeah.
And you gotta realize, okay, think about what you were thinking about what it took to make that newspaper layout.
Yeah.
Think about what it took to make this one.
A lot of animals, a lot of ink, and a lot of writing talent and thinking talent.
And the same, it's like the same. I think it's like, you talk about human populations have some, people with the same kind of characteristics. It's like there's always the autists. Like probably more or less of them, right? There's always the guys who made this must have been, like they're newspaper guys now, right? Or maybe they're web designers now. They love layout. You see how
maybe web designers
much layout. They love the detail on these illuminated initials. They love the script. They love fitting it all. It took a lot of animals, but to fit it all on one page, so that you had to line it and predict how long it's going to take you to write this section of commentary and this section of text, and put the picture in the right place. These are incredible, like tour de force of production. And collective,
and
they're collective projects. They have to be, because not the same people don't all have all the skills, right? So they've got a guy who does the pictures, a guy who does the illuminations, a guy who does the different fonts.
Yeah, it is a work of art. So in that sense, I can see how McLuhan compared a newspaper to like a Cubist art,
right? And these, it's like you're getting meaning from, I have an example of another book, right? You can get new versions of it. So this was the Psalter. What happens in the 12th and 13th centuries particularly is the book layout guys go bananas, right? They love the idea of having all of this knowledge systematized together. The next example I gave you was it's a commentary on Luke, right? So it's from a New Testament, and
that one was weird because it looked like a ledger.
Why?
Well, because there were literal like lines on the side with with commentary written on either side of them.
Yes, well seen.
Next to the text.
Why are all those lines there?
I don't know.
It's to write on. No, it's that's what you're there seeing is the under architecture. So if you thought about how the guys doing the newspapers had to frame all the type.
But it was a vertical line. wasn't a
Yeah,
horizontal
so
line.
this one
The one
is
I'm thinking
multiple
of.
columns, right? So they have double
Yes.
columns, and it has, I'm pulling out all my books now. Here, this is a great book. It's on the visualization of knowledge in medieval and early modern
Oh,
Europe.
that sounds
Yeah, and
cool.
it's
Yeah.
that I got some of the ooh, there's the I got distracted by mathematical diagrams. Um, that the layout in this book is very interesting because it's um multiple layers of commentary. Um, okay, so you're seeing those vertical things. It's like other biblical
Hmm.
cross references, Peter Lombard's author reference system, cross reference. So they're trying to figure out indexing systems and saying it's
Oh,
like hyper. Everybody says that
I
they're
was right.
hyperlinks, right? It's like go from here
Yeah.
to that text, go from here to that text, so that they're seeing when these guys are reading scripture. One, they have the base text memorized, and this is like making links for them. So it's like if you would say,
That
if
is
I love the
cool.
internet because you can go from this thought to that thought, and you're all in dream time, right?
Yeah, me
Dream
too.
time. You go,
Yeah.
here's this thing. Oh, I can look that thing up. Okay. Oh, wait, that thing can take me to this thing. That's what these pages are doing
Hmm.
for the Bible.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
That's really
Isn't
neat.
that cool?
Yeah, very cool.
I'll let you enjoy that thought for a bit. And that reminded me of something I forgot I was thinking about earlier. It's like how when you get caught up in the internet, you just lose the sense of time because you're in this other time, this dream time
Oh,
of
yeah.
connections and patterns. And this is what the guys who are reading the Bible, and these are mainly guys, reading the Bible in the schools in the 12th and 13th centuries are doing, which is that connects to that, that connects to that. Oh, he said something about
Yeah.
this. I'll put, and trying to put it all together, right? So Augustine said something about
Yeah.
this psalm, and Luke said, or Bede said something about, this part of this text on Luke, and they're trying to arrange it all on the page, and it takes the same kind of willingness to see connections that McLuhan is
Hmm.
seen, I think, in that layout of the newspaper page, right? That you are finding meaning in the juxtapositions and the associations and it's poetry.
Right. It's what you choose, what stories you choose to highlight, and what stories you choose to put next to which stories. Right.
Right.
It's all a lot. There's all a logic to it. It's not chaotic.
And the way and the thing is by the Luther and company, well, Luther actually still does some of this, right? But the reason that this mental world, I mean, for me is just amazingly delightful, right? Is because they're constantly finding connections at multiple layers of significance. We talked about this some, and I wrote about it last year about our poem that we're writing, right? That there's a story level, there's a symbol level, there's a moral level, there's a revelation level, and
Hmm.
that these pages are kind of showing you the way they think in that mosaic of meaning of the
Mm.
core of the scriptural text and the ways in which the commentators from centuries apart have been thinking about it together. So there's a way in which this is showing you a glimpse of like the whole of the temporal culture from 1,000 years worth of thinking about this
Mm.
text all together on that same page.
Very cool.
It is very cool.
Yeah, you're right. It's a proto-internet.
It totally is. I mean, medievalists, and this is okay. So one of the interesting things that McLuhan says about media is that new media enhance our capabilities in certain ways, right? That it's like print gives you one kind of ability to reproduce content or something like the stream does. They're enhancing our um, physical and mental abilities, right? Um, they once they intensify, he says they tend to reverse, right? We need to talk about that, like when eventually the media go bad on you. But another thing he says they
Mm.
do, sometimes they obsolesce other media, right? So the digital media made obsolesced the print newspapers, right? So we don't do the print newspapers anymore. But one
Hmm.
of the things that new media do, McLuhan pointed out, is they retrieve old media that have been previously lost. And I think with
Mm.
the manuscript world, to do these layouts took what's interesting about these particular Bible commentary layouts, apparently there weren't any like standardized ones. Every single page, the scribes had to figure it out each time, right? That's like as they're making these books, that the newspaper layout in a way is retrieving the multiplicity and multi-layeredness of these manuscript pages, even as it obsolesces other things. So it's fascinating, right? And one of the things that the page obsolesces is the oral culture that all of this commenting came out of, right? Because then it becomes fixed on a page.
Right. And that led to people reading stories on the internet, which led to people talking about it on live streams. So we've come full circle.
Isn't
now.
it wild? Right? So there's
there's
literally no reason to be sad about any of this. You know, it feels like terrifying and chaotic. And, you know, this, as McLuhan was trying to say, it's like this irrationality of the jumps, and like James Joyce is impossible to read, except for Mel, who loves it.
She really does.
And, you know, this feeling of, but it does actually give you some other kind of vision of coherence and connections. All right, so the manuscript pages look like that, and then we get to this is a printed version of the same glossing of commentary on Luke, and we have that central chunk of bigger type, which is the text of the Bible, the text of the scripture, and then the commentary arranged around it, right? We should now feel that this looks completely familiar.
Yeah. It's
like the Talmud, right?
Yeah.
And this is
See, now it makes sense. Now it doesn't look like a maze. I'm like, oh, okay, they were just writing around it. Okay.
They're writing around it. And okay, and this is that one that you said that looked like a key or something on the Talmud.
Yeah, that was
this apparently, and this is something that's interesting about the Talmud scholarship. That big green book that I was holding up has this great essay on the Talmud layout, which is what I'm drawing on now. That we only have one full Talmud with all 37 tractates from the Middle Ages. The rest of the Talmud manuscripts are only partial. So this one manuscript, this Oppenheimer, I hope I got the right one. That's the full one. Oppenheim 248 at the Bodleian is this one that I'm showing. And what's also interesting about it is most Talmud manuscripts don't have this complex layout. They're actually much more straightforward. They look more just like a commentary. So where did the scribes for the Talmud get the idea of doing the manuscript layout like this?
Was it those discussions they had in France? And they had discussions about them in the 13th century, 12th century.
They get it from the Christians, right? And this is what's interesting about it is, like, how do they get it from the Christians? You say, oh, why would the Jews have, you know, Christian books? I mean, it's Stern, David Stern, he's a Harvard professor. He actually pointed out, it's like the scholars have figured out exactly the Hebrews, the scribes who are working in Hebrew, and there's another like wild twist at the end of this. It's like why the Talmud looks like it does. It literally laid out like a Christian book. Guys, be a medievalist. It's always wilder than you expect. Why would the Jews know what Christian books look like?
Oh, because they were writing them? Were they scribing them?
The Christians are using them as pawn. They're for their loans.
Oh, okay. In my head, I had a racist joke and I didn't say it. I said, were they selling them?
No. It's so
they were
the Christians. No, the books are incredibly precious, right? And what the hypothesis is that the Hebrews, the Jewish scribes and everything, they see the Christian books because they have them, because the monks and clergy and everyone have given them to them as assurance on their loans.
Yeah, it's
It's
collateral.
collateral. Yeah.
Yeah. I was close. My joke was close.
And so we get some of these late medieval Talmud that are laid out with these multiple columns. Like, so here's the primary text, here's the commentary text. Here's now what's interesting about the commentary, the surrounding commentary, the littler commentary, in the Christian books, in the Glossa Ordinaria, it tends to be the older commentators like Augustine and Ambrose, Jerome, Gregory, a bunch of the Carolingians, Rabbanus Maurus, Remigius of Mosaic. Yeah, these are names I know. Bede and so forth. Put together in the 12th century, it's particularly put together. It's like it's a collective work. Like McLuhan is saying, the newspapers are collective. The Glossa Ordinaria is a collective project as well. It's started by Anselm and Ralph at Laon in the cathedral school, and they have teams of guys putting together the, like, I guess it's like, maybe, did you see the Mel Gibson movie where they're talking about making the dictionary?
No, I haven't seen that yet. I really want to see that.
Gibson does a cool, he's a fun character. He's like how many languages he knows and stuff. That was a sort of collective work of getting people to give citations of examples of use, that they had slips that they had everybody send in. It seems like putting together the Glossa Ordinaria was a little bit like that. It's like they have to compile all of these references and examples and then assemble them and put them together. And it is, the Glossa Ordinaria is therefore, it's not strictly completely anonymous, but it feels sort of true at that level of, it's the collective referencing of the community.
So they were taking commentary from different geographical areas and codifying it in this one book.
Right. Well, and also, I mean, like, from one of the funny things Stern says in his talking about the Talmud is it's like a representation of, millennia of the Jewish culture. And it's like, well, the Glossa Ordinaria is the same thing for the Christian, right? It's the centuries and centuries of meditation on the text, excerpted and sort of standardized.
Yeah. So they needed to get permission to use it from the people who owned the commentaries in these different places before they could include it in their book.
Oh no, nobody worries about permission at this point.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to figure out how they collected it.
They have lots of books, right? And it's like a big reference book. It's your Cliff Notes version of the fathers.
Church Fathers Cliff Notes.
Yeah, it's the Church Fathers Cliff Notes.
That'd be a big Cliff Notes.
No, well, here, look, this is a friend of mine did a translation of the Genesis Glossa Ordinaria, and I can give you an example of what it's like.
Okay.
What do you want to read? This is Genesis, so we did the fall, right? We'll do the fall. Okay. So they did the layout on this really nicely. So you can see that they have the the scripture text is in red in the middle, and then the commentary, and it's laid out like this one I'm showing on screen of the printed Glossa Ordinaria, right?
Nice.
So you'll have the Bible text, right? Now the serpent was more subtle than any of the beasts of the earth which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Why hath God commanded you that you should not eat of every tree of paradise? And the woman answered him, saying, Of the fruit of the trees that are in paradise we do eat. Okay, and then by this time with the Glossa Ordinaria, they have more like referencing systems. So there's little marks on the text to point you to places in the text and things like that. But say like here, okay, now the serpent was more subtle, and so forth. Augustine. Others translate this as the most subtle, prudentissimus. Some manuscripts have the wisest, sapientissimus, but not properly so, since that word is normally used in a good sense to refer to the wisdom of God, the angels, or the rational soul. The word is used here in a way similar to when we call bees or ants wise because of their works that imitate wisdom. The serpent can be called the wisest, not because of its rational soul, but because of its diabolic spirit. Although the bad angels fell because of their pride, by their nature they remain more excellent than all the beasts, because of the excellence of their reason. It is no marvel then if the devil, filling the serpent with his spirit, just as he has filled soothsayers, rendered it the wisest of all living beasts in respect to its living but irrational soul. For this reason there is said to be wisdom, sapientia, in an evil creature, just as there is cunning, astutia, in a good creature. However, in Latin, the wise are properly understood in a good sense, and the cunning as having evil in their hearts. It should not be thought that the devil himself chose the serpent through which he tempted. Rather, when the devil desired to deceive, he would have been unable, were he not permitted to do so through that animal. The will of doing harm can come from oneself, but the power comes from God. Okay, and then it goes on, right? And it's going to be commenting on, different parts of the text, and give several comments sometimes on the same passage. Like, okay, Augustine says this. This is a lot of Augustine. They're usually synopsing Augustine. Gregory, Strabo, mystical reading, and so forth, right? So you've got the core text and then the collective discussion.
I don't understand why. So if Jewish pawn shops had copies of these commentaries, why would they say, "Hey, that looks cool. We need to do it that way"? I mean,
why not? These are guys who like layout.
I would wonder what they're thinking.
Right?
A pawn shop owner likes layout.
Okay, so according to Professor Stern, the Talmud's laid out like this. There are also Hebrew Bibles that come with some commentary like this. The Talmud commentary is different. They appear about 100 years after the Christians have developed this layout. So,
well, yeah, that's pretty good evidence that they were using it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering. I don't know. You can't answer this question. I don't think. What was going through their head? Because they had such reflexive, from what I understand, they had such reflexive disgust of Christianity as a topic on its own, if not their Christian neighbors, but Christianity itself. Why would they want to use something that was Christian and say, hey, let's use that design?
Perhaps they're parts of the story that the internet's missing. What we do know, and you can see this, I mean, this is proof in the page layout. The Christians are talking to the rabbis, and the rabbis are talking to the Christians. They do actually share a lot of their discussion, although the Christians tend to pick up more of the Jewish commentary, I think, than vice versa. But
yeah, I mean, they also had that meeting specifically about the Talmud in Paris that you had mentioned a couple of weeks back, and
yet here are the Talmuds are laid out like Bibles, Christian commentaries, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay, but this mosaic style layout is, it's creating a kind of thought world, which you could say we should be familiar with the newspapers, although the newspapers don't have a core text, which is interesting, right? This is actually, there's an authority of something matters and we're going to comment on it. And the newspapers, they may be sort of juxtapositions of information, but they don't have a core claim.
Right, that's it. That's what's missing in the papers. It's like it's all commentary and there's no story. There's no actual story in the middle of it that they're commenting on. Yeah.
That's, yes. But symbolically, or medium wise, the vision of how we feel about everything now. What's the point? Right? There is no core. Okay, so there's another step. Okay, but this is even wilder, right? Okay, so we have manuscript Talmud that are laid out like this. It is very, very difficult to create this layout. I mean, the Christians are practicing with theirs. The Hebrew, the scribes are working in Hebrew. It's incredibly difficult to make sure that all of it fits on the page, right? It's like, I need this much text and I need this much room. And the Christians have obviously gotten extremely good at predicting how much space to leave so that they can have these very blocky layouts.
Right. Well, they had centuries of practice handwriting it out over and over and over again.
Right.
So I think they had a standard that every scribe had to meet.
They're more variable than you'd think, but yes. Okay, so this is a high degree of skill. And then you invent the printing press, which creates a different kind of possibility, which is if you spend all of this time making that layout and then you transfer it into a printed page, you can just replicate it over and over and over again.
Yes, including the mistakes.
Well, that, okay. But no, what's very interesting about here we have the oldest printed ever Talmud, on which every subsequent Talmud has been modeled. That 19th century version of the Talmud that everybody reads as like, the sort of ancient wisdom is in fact fixed in 1520. So 1520? Yes, 1523, by a printer, his name's Daniel Bomberg, working in Venice, who prints the Talmud with the layout that has now become, because of the Bomberg Babylonian Talmud, the Talmud Bavli, the Bomberg printing from 1520 is the standard layout to this day, used in terms of like the number of lines that the commentary has at the top and things like that. So that Stern talks about this, that there's by the 16th and 17th centuries, they're using these printed Talmuds, and they're all the same, right? They're so consistent that the students would memorize the layout, right? It's not just like there's an oral thing that then is transferred into the manuscript and then you talk about it because it's written down. It's like they memorize there's like a mysticism, I think, of what letter is at the top of the page at this point, kind of thing, because they're so completely standardized and fixed.
Okay, so Tucker Carlson was interviewing Ari Shafir this week, and he was talking about his experience in yeshiva in Israel. Yeah. And there was one day where I guess his rabbi was teaching them from the Talmud, from a certain page or a couple of pages from it. And at the end of the class, somebody runs in and says, "Here, you forgot your book." Right? So the guy had it memorized. Like, had all of it memorized, and they were just like,
yes, but they're memorizing it according to this Bomberg 1520 layout, printed in Venice.
Yeah, that must have made it easier, but it must have made it easier for cross-referencing in different schools across the world too, if they were all using the exact same copy.
I'm not getting this across to you with the force that I want you to have.
It's
incredibly unusual to have that level of standardization in a book.
Even a book that an entire religion is based around.
That's a difference. This is the page layout, right? This is not.
Oh, just the page.
Literally the page layout, the physical formation of the text, right? So that the sense of all those manuscripts I was showing you, we've got loads of different copies of the Glossa Ordinaria on the Bible, and they're all different, and every page is, because the scribe, all the scribes, they're trained. Book hands are very, very regular, but they vary a bit in size and things like that. Once you get printed type, you can replicate things much more mechanically, literally mechanically, very, very regularly. This layout and one of the features, Stern said, he doesn't say that this comes out of it. One of the things that is characteristic of Talmud study is pilpul, which is debate, right? You pair two students up and they debate. One of the things that this layout does is intensify that and regularize it. So you have the Talmud text, the Mishnah, Gemara, the Rashi, the Rashi's on the side, and then the Tosefet. And the Tosefet are commentaries on Rashi. And because of this page layout, they end up sort of facing off, right?
Oh, yeah, that's neat.
So it sort of faces off. No, what's wild about this is the Talmud as printed into the 19th century is laid out on the page identically. Every single reprinting of it, because because it was so hard to make sure that they got the whole layout fixed. So they just keep mimicking this layout, which is why the guys can.
But why is that unusual?
it's different from just having a print run of a book. It's like the same edition over and over and over again.
Okay, so they're all working off the same edition.
Right. Bomberg was Christian. They're not only using a Christian style of layout, they're using the Talmud as laid out by a Christian scholar to study the Talmud.
I'd like to see the commentary on that.
It's a Christian's layout of the text.
Standardized.
Never mind.
It's all very German, though, isn't it?
He was actually from
efficient.
Antwerp. He was set up in Venice to make it, but he was set up. It's
okay.
So this guys, there's like book history is wild, right? And what McLuhan got into all of this. I don't know if he studied the Talmud but he was used to the manuscripts and the feel of what it's like being in what he said the manuscript culture was a Mosaic culture because it's always putting together these pieces like this. And that he then sees that mosaic being replicated in things like the newspapers, and definitely the internet is very much like the medieval manuscript culture because it's not regularized. Maybe this will help you feel it. If you look at a page, a page on the internet, and it's on your phone as opposed to on your screen, as opposed to on your tablet, as opposed to on an Android, as opposed to, what will happen to it?
Oh yeah, the formatting gets all screwed up.
Right?
Yeah, it's all over the place.
That is much more like the manuscript culture when the formatting changes from book to book to book, right? Same text, but the formatting is going to change. This Talmud Bavli is the same regardless. Like, and it's wild that it was actually laid out because, I mean, the Christians are learning Hebrew in the 16th century to, study the Hebrew commentary. So it's laid out by a Christian scholar to study Hebrew is interesting. And then it's so well done that the Jewish scholars just keep using the same layout.
I like the idea of one commentary responding to another commentary and they're on opposite sides of the page.
Yeah. So Stern says that's actually, it's actually kind of funny that they did that because they were doing that. So there's more parallels, right? That that in their main commentary is Rashi, right, who's a 11th 12th century, I forgot what his full name is, apologies. I mean, he's the most famous commentator on the Talmud because he does the whole thing. And then the Tosafot challenge him and argue with him and make objections and things like that, right? And in Talmud study, this is like said to be characteristic, and Stern repeats this in his studies, saying the Talmud is not in fact a fixed understanding of the text. It's all in conversation. It's all wrestling with differences and contradictions, and you have to wrangle it out to figure out what it actually means. And that's different from the Christians.
Really?
Well, what's even funnier is, so Rashi's doing that he writes his commentary out in the 11th century, and then these guys come along in the 12th century and challenge him, right? That's literally what the Christians are doing to each other at the same time when they're doing, for example, the Glossa Ordinaria. The Glossa Ordinaria.
Oh, they've elevated argumentation to a virtue and said we own this virtue.
Can we say scholastic, right?
I'll argue that.
The what happens to the Tosafot sounds to me like, I don't know, Abelard, who famous guy in the early 12th century, gets castrated because complicated.
Eloise.
Yeah, Eloise.
Eloise's brothers were not happy.
Right. Yeah. Not her brothers, her uncle and his guys. Okay. And Abelard is in a big debate with Bernardo Clairvaux, and the thing that Abelard's famous for, or should be more famous, as famous for being castrated, is setting up a collection of contradictory commentaries on theological questions that he called Yes and No, Seek It Known. I mean, the Christians at the same time are literally putting together collections of things that they then argue about. So there's, I mean, the sort of
Yeah.
fantasy that, oh, the Christians have one authoritative text that they all completely agree on. It's like, that's literally scholasticism is set up to
Yeah.
debate, which is all, sounds to me also like the pill pool, right? That they have the same kind of disputation, questiones, right? You set a question and then people debate it.
Hmm.
So there's one culture in the High Middle Ages in this intellectual world, and it's like physically there on the page, which McLuhan I think would say the medium is creating this kind of conversation among all of them, and that the Hebrew books are laid out just
Yeah.
like the Christian Latin books are.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
one
Yeah. So
culture.
there's right. It's your evidence of the culture. So they were doing the exact same
Right.
things. That's neat.
It is neat, right?
That's neat.
It's
Yeah.
and that would be the medium level of, wait a minute, exactly. And this then gets us to, more intense meditations of what's the core of our culture, right? It
Hmm.
I listening to the debates on the internet, and there's like, Christians need to be Christian and not, Talmudic and da da da. It's like, do you guys understand what any of this is? You're in the same
Probably.
medium.
Yeah.
You are arguing the medium is the message. We're already in all of this. Don't think that you're not part of that same kind of environmental
Yeah.
effect. And that,
But they're also thinking in newspaper layout. They're not thinking of things in depth.
well, we are living in newspaper layout for sure, right? Yes.
Yeah.
And that we're back to the sensational newspapers. Pay attention to the medium in which we are encountering each other. The medium is going to structure more of our experience than the content does,
Hmm.
is McLuhan's major claim.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad I've never read him yet because if I read him now, I'm a lot more likely to understand it. Having these conversations
Hopefully,
with you.
the oral, right? It looks like we've recovered the
Yeah.
oral conversation that then enables you to make sense of the, glossa
Yeah.
ordinaria of McLuhan. That would be great.
Right. Yeah.
That'd be really good. Yeah, but then and also to realize why I think to a large extent many of the online debates are like hamster wheel stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. Feels like it. Yeah.
because you're still within the same um uh cognitive architecture.
Hmm. I'm jealous. She's got all these books in front of her. I just want to grab them and see them.
Well, this one's the Mechanical
I
Bride,
can't grab it through
which
here.
I don't know what I this one is actually a first,
That's a big
it's actually a
one.
first edition, I think, that I got.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
very large.
I think this is actually a first edition,
Cool.
but falling apart because it's from a library sold off from the Albertson Public Library in Orlando, Florida.
Hmm.
Um, so this is his concluding thought on the muckrakers, which we've got on screen now. Where the muckrakers were wrong was in attributing any particular malice to specially placed individuals, when it is plain that all the victims of this situation contribute daily to maintain it in thought, word, and deed. When you're trying to figure out who's the great, like they who are conspiring to create, McLuhan would say, we're in it, right? The media has created this.
Yeah. They have. Yeah. They have, but it's been going on for centuries, as he points
That
out.
too, right?
The atmosphere of anxiety.
Even pacifist agitation or the nationwide fever of big sports competitions acts as a spur to war fever in circumstances like ours. He's writing in 1951, right? So it's beginning of the Cold
Hmm.
War. Any kind of excitement or emotion contributes to the possibility of dangerous explosions when the feelings of huge populations are kept inflamed, even in peacetime, for the sake of the advancement of commerce. Headlines mean street sales. It takes emotion to move merchandise. And wars and rumors of wars are the merchandise and also the emotion of the popular press. When people have been accustomed for decades to perpetual emotions, a dispassionate view of anything at all is difficult to achieve. But surely our world, more than that in any previous epoch, calls for detached appraisal. Let us try to get such a cool view of the ballet loose.
Perpetual emotion. That's a great
Emotion.
phrase. That's the hamster wheel. Yeah.
And now we have a different sense, hopefully, of what's driving it. And it's not necessarily the machinations of unseen peoples behind us. It's literally the environment that we're in, which is,
Yeah.
I'd say to a certain extent, I feel a little bit more hopeful about the effects of the internet right now, because I think people have gotten over a lot of the shocks of some of the things that can happen in the internet. Like when you suddenly find out your neighbors don't agree with you on everything. Oh, wow. Like news.
Yeah, which you would have known had you been talking to them anyway, right?
I'd say maybe it's like I don't know, of the variety of things you say, how did I, not get swept up in certain kinds of things. One, I think I just thought about this right now, is moving around enough so I was constantly the outsider, right? So being used to having people not understand you well. Right? And
Yeah.
the other thing I've seen people getting frustrated with, some here on our very own unauthorized TV, is why can't people snap out of it? For goodness sake. The spells, I've been breaking them all along. Why are you guys still so stupid? Well,
okay. Because it doesn't have anything to do with your brain. It has to do with your limbic system,
Yes.
and anxiety.
Yes.
That's why it's not something you can think yourself out of.
Well, and having people around trying to make you upset by triggering you all the time.
Right.
It's not exactly calculated.
It's like, you're getting a constant shot of adrenaline. It's hard to come off of that.
Right.
Even if you want to. You walk out your door and somebody's there with a blow dart gun full of adrenaline and hits you again. It's like it's everywhere you turn, and it takes a real effort to not allow yourself to be sucked into that kind of I'm gonna say atmosphere, attitude.
And yet we know that we have the antidote, and we always have. Which what should we talk about next about McLuhan, or to get to in thinking about McLuhan, is that he was Catholic, and he actually did understand that all of this, what we experience in our spiritual lives, is of a piece with what's been going on all along in the first place. So
yeah. Right, where we experience a lot of things in the real physical world, because there's the real spiritual things going on too at the same time. Right. There's battles going on constantly,
and we're in them.
And we're in them. We're in them whether we know it or not.
And look, we were surrounded by all these books. There must be an answer in them somewhere.
Read 1,000 more. Let's see.
Well, and I mean, even in the midst of the books, you're still in that sort of complexity of the page layout, right? Because you're always having to put together all of these pieces, I think, right? It's like a regular book can give you the illusion of a single story, but you're still in the midst of multiple books. So, yeah, a library is a giant mosaic that you're trying to.
Yes, it is.
Articulate.
And every story can be one too, because of all the influences that went into it.
Yes, exactly. So do we know what we're going to talk about next time? What do you think?
McLuhan?
More McLuhan.
Is this McLuhan month?
This is McLuhan month. We'll figure out something. Now you've been armed, at least in certain layers of understanding. One, why we call this show the Mosaic Ark. We're sailing on the live stream in the Mosaic. And two, how this is to a certain extent, yes, there's need to be alarm and cause to concern of the effects that the media is having on us, but it's also a joyous practice. We'll get there.
Eventually.
Okay, I believe Casey's still feeling like she's being yelled at by these headlines. war, buy stuff.
Yeah,
Buy stuff.
I feel
Oh,
like that
that's what I was
constantly.
thinking about. So this is Alex Jones is a genius, but mainly because he simply in the live stream exteriorized these newspaper techniques, right?
Oh,
Right? You know,
yeah.
you have all of the headlines yelling danger, 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 danger. Oh, look, buy my pills and, you know, be healthy. Danger,
Right.
danger, danger. Pills, danger, pills, danger. Woo!
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, he does the screaming headlines thing well.
He also sells, you know, nerve tonic.
I don't know if he's using it. It ain't working.
We
It's
pray for
like,
all our brothers and sisters in the fray. In the fray. We're all in
yeah.
it. And affected by it. And we wish we could get more of you to subscribe and, you know, buy our stuff. And we're now good at headlines. Because we're here.
We're really not.
We're the calm.
Good
We're the
stories, though.
tonic. We're the calming tonic of the internet. We hope.
We hope. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Night, night. Sleep well. There will be more stories next week.